On a summer night in 1977, a radio telescope in Ohio recorded a signal from the depths of space so strong, so strange, and so exactly like what scientists imagined an alien transmission might look like, that the astronomer who found it circled the data and scrawled a single word beside it. Wow. That signal lasted 72 seconds, came from the direction of a distant constellation, and then vanished. It has never been detected again. And to this day, nearly 50 years later, no one knows for certain what it was. This is the story of the WOW signal. To decode that famous string a little further, the survey rated signal strength with a single character per interval, using digits 1 through 9, and then letters for anything higher. So the jump to the letter U was staggering, an intensity the system almost never had cause to print. And the signal was narrowband, squeezed into a sliver of the radio spectrum. Nature tends to broadcast across wide, messy ranges of frequency. Narrow, concentrated signals are the signature of a transmitter, a deliberate, tuned source of energy. It remains the most famous and tantalizing candidate signal in the entire history of the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Not proof of aliens, but the closest thing we have ever found to the kind of message we have spent decades listening for. It is a genuine, unsolved cosmic mystery, one that has haunted scientists ever since. This is Deep Field. To understand the WOW signal, you have to understand what its discoverers were doing. Since the 1960s, a small band of scientists had been engaged in one of the boldest projects imaginable, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, or SETI. The idea was simple, if humbling. If there are other technological civilizations out there among the billions of stars, they might be broadcasting radio signals, whether deliberately or as a byproduct of their technology. And if we listen carefully enough, we might just catch one. The modern search had begun in 1960, when the astronomer Frank Drake pointed a telescope at two nearby stars in a project called OSMA, listening for any artificial signal. Drake also devised his famous equation, a way of estimating how many communicating civilizations might exist in our galaxy. The numbers were wildly uncertain, but they were not zero, and that was enough to justify listening. SETI was born from a simple, staggering premise that we might not be alone, and that the only way to find out was to look. One of the great listening posts in this search was a radio telescope at Ohio State University known as the Big Ear. It was an enormous, unusual instrument, a vast flat field of metal and reflectors that scanned the sky as the Earth turned beneath it. For years, the Big Ear patiently swept the heavens, recording the radio hiss of the cosmos onto printouts, hunting for anything that stood out from the natural background noise of the universe. The Big Ear was the creation of the astronomer John Krause, and it was a peculiar and ingenious design, a huge, mostly flat reflector the size of several football fields, feeding radio waves into detectors. For years it conducted one of the longest-running SETI surveys ever attempted, methodically scanning strip after strip of sky. It was painstaking, unglamorous work, mostly recording nothing but the faint, featureless static of the cosmos, night after night after night. And the Big Ear was tuned to listen near a very special frequency, around 1420 megahertz. This is the frequency naturally emitted by hydrogen, the most common element in the universe. SETI theorists had long argued that this was the obvious frequency on which to expect an interstellar message. Any civilization doing astronomy would know it. It is quiet and clear, and it would act as a kind of universal cosmic meeting point, a natural channel that anyone in the galaxy might think to use. On the 15th of August, 1977, the Big Ear recorded its data as usual, and the printouts were later reviewed by a volunteer astronomer named Jerry Ehman. Going through page after page of numbers and letters representing signal strength, Ehman's eye caught something extraordinary, a sequence that leapt off the page. Among the low background values, there was a sudden, intense spike, a signal far stronger than anything around it. Ehman was not even looking at the data live. Like most of the survey's output, the recording had been made automatically and printed out for later review, so the signal was already days old by the time human eyes fell on it. That is part of the poignancy of the story. For 72 seconds, something extraordinary had poured into the telescope, and no one had been watching. It was only discovered afterward, frozen in a column of numbers on a computer printout. The signal was recorded as the now legendary code 6EQUJ5. That string is not a message. It is the telescope's way of representing intensity, with numbers and then letters standing for higher and higher signal strength. The letter U represented an intensity higher than the system usually ever saw. It meant the signal was roughly 30 times louder than the normal background hum of deep space. Ehman was so startled that he circled the sequence in red pen and wrote, beside it, the word that gave the signal its name. Wow. And here's why it was so exciting. The wow signal had almost every hallmark that SETI scientists had predicted a genuine alien transmission would have. It was found right around that magic hydrogen frequency. It was narrowband, meaning concentrated into a very narrow slice of frequencies, which is characteristic of a deliberate, artificial transmission rather than the broad smear of most natural cosmic sources. And it was powerful, and it came from the sky, not from Earth. On paper, it looked almost too good to be true. The frequency was almost eerily specific, sitting right around the hydrogen line at roughly 1420 megahertz. For decades, SETI thinkers had argued that this was the single most logical frequency in the universe on which to attempt contact, a natural landmark that any scientific civilization would recognize. To find a strong, narrow, artificial-looking signal sitting almost exactly on that cosmic landmark was, for the SETI community, close to a dream scenario. The duration was crucial, and it fit perfectly too. The big ear did not track objects across the sky. It stared at a fixed point and let the Earth's rotation sweep the beam across the heavens. Any steady source in space would therefore appear to rise in intensity, peak, and fade over about 72 seconds as it passed through the telescope's field of view. And that is exactly what the WOW signal did. It rose and fell over 72 seconds, behaving precisely as a real, distant, fixed source in space should behave. But the Big Ear's design also produced a genuine puzzle that has never been resolved. The telescope had 2 feed horns, 2 detectors pointed at slightly different parts of the sky, so that any real celestial source should sweep through both, a few minutes apart, producing 2 matching blips. The WOW signal appeared in only one horn. Whether it was missed in the other for some mundane reason, or whether this points to something stranger about the signal, remains one of the case's most stubborn loose ends. When astronomers worked out where in the sky the signal had come from, it pointed toward the constellation Sagittarius, in the direction of the heart of our galaxy, a region dense with stars. Somewhere out in that star-rich direction, for 72 seconds, something had shone brightly in the radio sky at the one frequency SETI cared about most, and then gone silent. It was, in every measurable way, a spectacular candidate for exactly what the search had been hunting for. Pinning down the exact spot proved tricky, again because of those 2 horns, which left 2 slightly different possible positions on the sky. Both lay in the constellation Sagittarius, in a rich star field toward the galactic center, not far from a grouping of stars sometimes referenced as Chi Sagittarii. There were no obvious, remarkable objects there, no known powerful radio source, nothing that jumped out as an easy explanation. Just ordinary stars, and, for 72 seconds, an extraordinary signal. But in science, a single observation is never enough, especially for a claim as enormous as alien contact. The obvious, essential next step was to look again, to point the telescope back at that same patch of sky and see if the signal returned. If it was a genuine beacon from an alien civilization, or even a repeating natural source, it might well come back. Ehman and his colleagues, and many others in the years since, did exactly that. They looked again, and again, and again. And they found nothing. Despite numerous follow-up searches with the Big Ear and, over the decades, with other, far more powerful radio telescopes, the WOW signal has never been detected a second time. That same spot in Sagittarius has been examined repeatedly, at that same frequency, and it has remained silent. The most promising signal SETI had ever found appeared exactly once, for 72 seconds, and then never again. And that silence is the crux of the whole mystery. The follow-up efforts were serious and repeated. In the years after, astronomers returned to that patch of sky with the big ear many times. Later, others used far more sensitive instruments, including large arrays of radio dishes, to stare at the location for extended periods. One careful search in the 1990s devoted many hours to it with a powerful array and detected absolutely nothing. Every attempt to catch the signal again has come back empty. The sky there has stayed stubbornly quiet. A signal that appears only once is scientifically maddening. It cannot be confirmed. It cannot be studied further. We cannot analyze it for structure or content. We are left with a single, brilliant, isolated data point and no way to interrogate it. If it was a deliberate alien beacon, why would it not repeat? And if it was some natural phenomenon, what kind of natural source produces a narrowband signal at the hydrogen line, strong enough to astonish, and then never does so again? Defenders of the alien hypothesis have an answer to the non-repetition, at least in principle. A civilization might sweep a narrow beam across the galaxy like a lighthouse, so that any given star only catches the flash briefly, once, as the beam passes. Or the transmission might simply have been switched off. In that view, a one-time detection is exactly what you might expect from a beacon not aimed permanently at us. It is a reasonable argument. It is also, frustratingly, impossible to prove. Over the decades, scientists have proposed a whole range of explanations, none of them fully satisfying. The possibilities fall into three broad camps. It was a genuine signal from an extraterrestrial civilization. It was some natural astronomical phenomenon we do not fully understand. Or it was some form of interference, an earthly signal that only appeared to come from space. Each of these has been argued, and each runs into serious problems. The most mundane explanation is interference, that the signal came not from the stars, but from something here on or near Earth, a stray transmission, a satellite, a reflection off a piece of space debris. But this runs into a real obstacle. The frequency near the hydrogen line is internationally protected precisely to keep it clear for radio astronomy. Transmitting there is restricted, and the way the signal rose and fell over exactly 72 seconds strongly suggested a fixed source in the sky, not a passing earthly transmitter. In more recent years, one researcher proposed that the culprit was a pair of comets that happened to be passing through that region of sky in 1977, surrounded by clouds of hydrogen gas that, he suggested, could have produced the signal. It was an intriguing idea, and it got a lot of attention. But it was also heavily criticized by other astronomers, who argued that comets simply do not emit radio waves in the narrow, intense way the WOW signal did. Most experts consider the comet explanation unconvincing. More recently, researchers combing through archival data have floated another natural idea, that a cloud of cold hydrogen in space might have been briefly and dramatically brightened, perhaps by a sudden burst of radiation from a passing magnetar or a similar source, producing a one-off flare at exactly the hydrogen frequency. It is an intriguing modern hypothesis, and it stays firmly within known physics. But like every explanation before it, it remains unconfirmed, a plausible story rather than a proven answer. That is the frustrating pattern with every natural explanation offered. Each one struggles to account for the particular combination of features that made the signal so striking, its narrowband intensity, its location right at the hydrogen frequency, and its clean 72-second profile. The very qualities that made the WOW signal look artificial are the same qualities that make it so hard to explain away as an ordinary natural event. It sits, awkwardly, in a gap between all our tidy categories. There have even been attempts to identify a specific source star. One analysis pointed to a distant, sun-like star lying within the signal's possible location as a candidate origin, a place worth pointing our instruments. It is a fascinating lead, but it is speculative, one star among many in a crowded field, singled out by probability rather than by any direct evidence. It shows how the mystery still pulls at researchers, who keep returning to that patch of Sagittarius, hoping it will speak again. So let us be completely honest and clear about where the science stands, because this is important. The WOW signal is not proof of aliens. It has never been confirmed as anything, and the responsible scientific position is that its origin is simply unknown. It might have been a natural phenomenon we have not yet identified. It might have been some rare form of interference. The mainstream view is emphatically not that we detected an alien civilization in 1977. But, and this is what keeps it fascinating, no one has ever been able to definitively explain it either. Nearly 50 years and countless hours of investigation later, the WOW signal remains genuinely unexplained. It is not a solved case wrongly hyped as a mystery. It is a real anomaly that has resisted every attempt to pin it down. And it happens to be the single best match we have ever recorded for what a deliberate signal from another civilization might look like. Jerry Ehman himself, the man who wrote that famous WOW, was always careful and scientific about it. He resisted leaping to the conclusion that it was aliens, noting that a truly significant signal ought to have repeated, and that one-time events demand caution. Yet he also could not explain it away, and over the years he acknowledged that he could not rule out an extraterrestrial origin. His stance captured the whole thing perfectly: deep caution and deep, unresolved wonder. That balance is exactly what good science demands, and it is harder than it sounds. The temptation, with a signal this evocative, is to let hope override rigor, to announce contact and bask in the wonder. Ehman refused to do that, and so has the broader scientific community. They have held the line, insisting on the standard that any real detection must be repeatable and verifiable. The WOW signal, for all its glory, has never met that standard, and so it waits, unclassified, in the record. The telescope that caught the signal is gone now. The Big Ear was eventually decommissioned and, in the late 1990s, demolished to make way for a golf course, an oddly mundane fate for the instrument that recorded humanity's most famous possible hello from the cosmos. The great flat listening field that had swept the skies for years was simply cleared away. But the data it captured on one August night in 1977 lives on, still argued over, still unexplained. There is something almost poetic in the Big Ear's fate. The instrument that recorded humanity's most famous cosmic question mark was torn down to build a golf course, its extraordinary history paved over for a very ordinary purpose. The scientists who had run it for decades watched their great listening machine dismantled. But the printout survived, and Jerry Ehman's red-inked WOW survived, and that scrap of paper has outlived the telescope that produced it, a relic of the night the universe may have spoken. The WOW signal endures in the imagination for a reason deeper than the technical details. It represents a moment when humanity looked up, listened, and heard something it could not account for, something that ticked nearly every box for the message we have always wondered whether we would ever receive. For 72 seconds, the universe seemed, just possibly, to have said something, and then it fell silent, leaving us to wonder forever whether we had truly heard it, or only hoped we had. The signal also sits inside a much larger and stranger puzzle, the one the physicist Enrico Fermi captured in a simple question. If the galaxy is so vast and so old, and if life and intelligence are at all common, then where is everybody? Why, after decades of listening, is the sky so silent? Against that backdrop of overwhelming silence, the WOW signal stands out all the more, a single, tantalizing exception to the great quiet, one brief moment when the silence may, just may, have been broken. It also stands as a lesson in scientific honesty. It would be easy and thrilling to declare the WOW signal proof of alien life. But real science does not work that way. A single unrepeatable event, however spectacular, cannot bear the weight of so enormous a claim. And so scientists hold two things in their minds at once: the discipline to say we do not know, and the openness to admit that we have not explained it, and that we cannot yet rule out the most extraordinary possibility of all. And the search continues. Modern SETI efforts use vastly more sensitive instruments and scan enormous swaths of the sky, hunting for another wow, another anomaly, ideally one that repeats and can finally be confirmed or explained. Every so often, a new candidate signal makes headlines, and every time, scientists apply the same hard test: the wow. Signal failed. Does it repeat? Can it be verified? So far, nothing has matched that one astonishing night in Ohio. Today's searches dwarf anything the big ear could do. Vast projects funded to scan millions of stars, listening across enormous ranges of frequency, with computing power the 1970s could not dream of, sift the sky continuously for the next candidate. They have flagged intriguing blips before, and each has been chased down and, so far, explained or dismissed. The dream remains the same as Ehman's, to find a signal that does the one thing: the wow. Signal never did, to come back, and let us be sure. So remember the wow. Signal. Remember that for 72 seconds in the summer of 1977, a telescope in Ohio recorded something from the direction of Sagittarius that looked, in nearly every respect, like the interstellar message humanity had been dreaming of. Remember that it never came back, that no one has ever explained it, and that it was never confirmed to be anything at all. It is not an answer. It is one of the most haunting question marks in the history of science. And perhaps that is its true meaning. The wow signal is not evidence that we are not alone. It is evidence of how badly we want to know, and of how thin the line is between a great discovery and an eternal question mark. One telescope, one summer night, one 72-second whisper from the direction of the galactic center, and a single word scrawled in the margin, still capturing, half a century later, the exact feeling of standing at the edge of the greatest question we have ever asked. Deep field exists for exactly these mysteries, the signals and objects at the edge of our understanding that refuse to give up their secrets. If the idea of a single unexplained whisper from the direction of the galactic center stirs something in you, subscribe and stay with us. The universe is still talking, and we are still, patiently, listening. This has been Deep Field.